I remember the sound before I saw it. A low rumble rolled through the valley, heavy and angry, like thunder crawling across the hills. Then came the crack, sharp, deep, and final. For a second, time slowed. The bridge I'd built with my own hands 15 years ago groaned under the weight of the cement truck, and then gave a warning sigh that turned into a snap. I watched as the front axle dipped, the truck's nose plunged forward, and a river of wet cement poured straight into the creek below. The air filled with that thick, sour smell of concrete. And standing on the far side, sunglasses shining, arms crossed like a queen inspecting her kingdom, was Karen. "You're paying for this, Mike," she yelled. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The trail cameras hidden on both sides of the bridge were already blinking red. That was the moment she learned that my bridge wasn't just made of steel and wood. It was made of boundaries. 15 years earlier, this place had been peace itself, the kind of quiet you can hear. Back then, I wasn't building a fortress. I was building a dream. My cabin, my creek, and my small wooden bridge that connected both halves of my land. I marked it clearly with a sign that read, "Private Bridge, 5-ton limit." I never thought that simple sign would one day start a war. For years, that bridge only carried what it was meant to carry: deer, my pickup, and my peace. Then Karen moved in. She came with shiny SUVs, scented candles, and the kind of confidence that smells like trouble. Within months, she'd formed a homeowners association, a self-appointed government with rules no one asked for. Most of the neighbors went along. Some didn't even understand what they were signing. I stayed out of it until her people showed up at my gate holding clipboards. I told them what I told everyone. This land isn't part of your HOA. My bridge isn't community property, and no one crosses without permission. Karen didn't like that. And when a person like her doesn't like something, they don't argue. They organize. A week later, I found a letter in my mailbox. It was polite in tone and poisonous in meaning. "Dear resident," it said, "we are requesting shared access across your bridge for community development. Refusal may be considered non-compliant with HOA community interests." I laughed when I read it and pinned it to my fridge like a bad joke. But that joke got serious the next morning when I woke up to the sound of engines. Not cars, cement trucks. They were crossing my bridge, one after another, ignoring my sign like it was invisible. I ran outside yelling, waving my arms, but they didn't stop. The boards groaned under the weight. That's when I heard the first tiny crack, a sound you never forget. That evening, Karen arrived in her white SUV, clipboard in hand, and that smirk that made you feel like you'd already lost. "Mike," she said, "we've decided this bridge is part of the community easement. We're building a tennis complex, and this is the only access." I pulled out my property survey papers and pointed at the lines that clearly marked the bridge within my land. She laughed and said, "Oh, we can fix that. Maps can be redrawn." That was the moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an invasion. The next morning, I put up a heavy chain across the entrance and a fresh sign that read, "No trespassing. Weight limit enforced." By noon, the chain was cut, the sign was gone, and a bright yellow notice was taped to my gate. It read, "HOA violation notice. Unauthorized obstruction of community roadway. $500 fine." I stared at it and felt something colder than anger settle inside me. I started documenting everything. Photos, videos, dates, times, every violation, every truck. I knew emotion wouldn't win this battle. Evidence would. A few days later, the bridge gave me a warning. A loud pop echoed across the valley as another cement truck crossed. When I checked, one of the main planks had split clean through. The bridge sagged just a little, but enough to tell me something had to change. I placed my hand on the railing and felt it tremble like a pulse. That's when the idea began to form. Not out of rage, but out of reason. If they wouldn't respect the bridge, maybe the bridge could teach them respect. I called my friend Miguel, an engineer. We sat by the creek with 2 beers and talked until sunset. I told him everything. He listened quietly and finally said, "Mike, you could design it to fail safely." I raised an eyebrow. Fail safely. He smiled. Not collapse. Just bend under the kind of weight it's not meant to take. Let physics do the talking. I like that. So together, We replaced the main bolts with shear pins, strong enough for my pickup, but designed to give way under a cement truck. It wouldn't break the bridge, it would just let it sag. Enough to make a point. After that, I installed 4 trail cameras. Hidden in the trees, watching silently. Karen thought she was unstoppable, but I knew something she didn't. Even arrogance can't outsmart gravity. That's when I stopped fighting and started waiting. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning a lesson. A patient one. Because sometimes, all it takes is the weight of your own mistakes to bring you down. The morning it happened felt like any other. Clear sky, birds in the trees, the creek moving slow and calm beneath the bridge. I was sipping coffee on my porch, thinking maybe Karen had finally given up. Maybe common sense had won for once. But then I heard again, that low, familiar rumble from a distance. I set the mug down. It wasn't thunder this time. It was diesel. The sound grew louder, closer, heavier. When the first cement truck came into view, my heart kicked into gear. Big white drum, fresh company logo, and sitting in the passenger seat like she was riding in a victory was Karen. Her sunglasses caught the sun and flashed like a signal. Behind that first truck came another. 2 of them, both lined up, rolling straight toward my bridge like they owned the ground under their wheels. I stayed quiet, didn't move. I wanted the cameras to catch everything clean and uninterrupted. The first truck stopped at the bridge's edge. The driver leaned out his window, hesitating. He must have seen the 5-ton limit sign. Karen tapped his arm and shouted something. I couldn't hear from my porch, but her hand gesture said it all. Go. The truck rolled forward. The board started to hum under its weight, the steel beams groaning like old bones. My bridge was alive, and it was speaking in creaks and pops. I could almost feel it through the ground. Halfway across, it happened. A sharp metallic snap echoed like a gunshot. The front axle dipped, then the back end rose for a moment before the whole truck sagged downward. The shear pins gave exactly as planned, bending the middle section of the bridge into a perfect U-shape. For 1 second, everything froze, truck, driver, Karen, even the birds went silent. Then the front tires plunged through, hitting the shallow creek with a splash that sprayed gray water and cement dust everywhere. Karen screamed something that didn't sound like words. The truck driver scrambled out of the window, boots slipping on wet wood. Cement poured down the incline, turning the clear creek into a bubbling mess of gray sludge. It looked like the earth itself was swallowing their arrogance whole. I stood at the edge, watching calmly. The cameras blinked. My heart didn't race, it just steadied. This was gravity doing what people refuse to. Karen ran over to the edge, her shoes sinking in the mud. You sabotaged it, she shouted. Her voice cracked. You'll pay for this. I finally spoke, calm and even. Karen, you were told. Repeatedly. 5-ton limit. You ignored it. You can't do this to community property, she barked back. I looked her straight in the eyes. Community property doesn't come with my name on the deed. She froze for a moment. Then her face turned red. She stormed off. Phone already pressed her ear. I knew what was coming next. Police, insurance, lawyers, the whole storm. I didn't care. I had truth, timestamps, and physics on my side. By evening, the video was already online. One of my cameras had a direct cloud feed. I didn't upload it. I just didn't hide it. Someone found the link and shared it. Cement Karen versus Gravity started trending within hours. Comments poured in like rain. Some people thought it was fake. Others called me a hero. One guy wrote, "That's what happens when you think HOA rules beat physics." Karen hated it. The next day, I found a sheriff's car parked by my gate. The deputy was polite, professional, and just as curious as everyone else. "Sir," he said, "we've had a complaint filed. They're saying you engineered that bridge to collapse." I showed him the footage. Every warning, every time-stamped violation. The deputy watched quietly, nodded, and said, "Looks like they ignored the sign." Then he handed me a copy of the report and left. That night, I sat by the creek, watching the moonlight reflect off the half-sunken cement truck. I could hear frogs somewhere upstream. I wasn't proud. I wasn't laughing. I just felt done, like justice had quietly balanced itself without needing words. But of course, Karen wasn't finished. 3 days later, I received a letter, this time not from the HOA, but from her attorney. It was short and sharp. Our client intends to pursue legal action for damages totaling $250,000 resulting from structural sabotage and willful negligence. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Sabotage? Negligence? She'd been told. She'd been warned. She'd ignored every limit, every sign, every ounce of reason. Now she wanted to make herself the victim. Still, I hired a lawyer. Not because I was scared, but because I knew exactly how people like Karen worked. They shouted until someone smarter made them stop. While my attorney gathered the surveys, I gathered patience. I knew the law would move slow. In the meantime, the internet kept the story alive. The footage hit 2 million views in a week. Someone even added dramatic music to it and called it Karen versus Gravity, the final chapter. The HOA members started turning on her. Rumors spread that she'd been using association funds for personal expenses. Some neighbors who'd once been afraid of her were now laughing about the video at the local diner. You could tell she felt it, the power slipping away like that truck sinking into cement. One evening, I was walking back from the creek when I saw Karen's SUV parked by the broken bridge. She was standing there alone, staring at the wreck. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I heard her mutter under her breath, "He's going to regret this." I smiled to myself. Maybe I would, but not today. The lawsuit came like winter, expected, cold, and inconvenient. I wasn't surprised when I got the official papers. Karen had filed for $250,000 in damages. According to her, I had sabotaged a community bridge with malicious intent. Community bridge. That phrase made me laugh every time I read it. My lawyer, James, was a calm man, mid-50s, gray hair, voice like steady gravel. He'd seen too many cases like this. "Don't worry, Mike," he said as he flipped through the documents. "These people always overreach. We'll burn through her story like sunlight through fog." He didn't smile much, but when he did, it meant he was confident. The first hearing was set for mid-May. By that time, the video of the bridge collapse had already been seen by millions. It had its own subreddit, meme pages, and even a remix where someone added dramatic drums and slow motion. Karen's reputation had taken a nosedive online. But in court, things are different. Courtrooms don't care about likes and shares. They care about paper and proof. When the day arrived, I wore my old brown jacket. Not because it looked good, but because I'd worn it the day I built the bridge. It felt right to have it with me. The courtroom was small and wood-paneled, the kind of place where the air always smells faintly of dust and seriousness. Karen sat on the other side of the aisle, surrounded by 2 lawyers, whispering and pretending to be calm. Her hair was perfectly done, her pearl earrings gleaming under the lights. You could tell she'd rehearsed her look, the face of a victim. When the judge entered, everyone stood. Then it began. Karen's lawyer started with a speech that sounded like it came straight out of a soap opera. He painted her as a community leader, a woman who worked tirelessly to build shared spaces for the good of the neighborhood, only to be attacked by a hostile property owner who set a trap. He even used that word, trap. He made me sound like a cartoon villain with a wrench and a grudge. When it was our turn, James didn't say much. He just nodded to the clerk and had the first exhibit queued up, a 30-second clip from one of my cameras. The courtroom went silent as the video started. There was the bridge, the sign, the trucks, the slow-motion sag, and there was Karen, right in the shot, waving the driver forward. For a few seconds, you could hear nothing but the hum of the TV. Then the snap, that same sound I still heard in my head sometimes. Karen's lawyer shifted in his seat. The judge leaned forward. James said quietly, "Your Honor, this footage was recorded on Mr. Mike's private property with posted warnings and legal signage. The bridge was rated for 5 tons. The vehicle weighed over 20. We have engineering documentation to verify that." He paused, letting it sink in. "Furthermore," he continued, "we have property surveys dating back 15 years, showing the bridge lies entirely within his boundary lines, not a community easement." He placed the surveys on the table. Crisp, official, stamped. Karen's face went pale. She whispered something to her lawyer, but he didn't look up. The judge examined the papers, then asked, Mrs. Anderson, did your HOA ever obtain legal rights to this property or bridge? Her lawyer stood up, fumbling through a binder. Your Honor, we have an updated HOA map showing the area as shared access. The judge raised an eyebrow. Updated by whom? That was the moment everything turned. James walked up, holding the updated map we'd received during discovery. It had been altered slightly but clearly. The boundary lines were redrawn, the ink inconsistent with the rest of the document. Your Honor, he said, this map was falsified. A murmur spread through the courtroom. Karen froze. Her hands trembled as she reached for her water bottle. The judge took off his glasses. Mrs. Anderson, are you aware that falsifying HOA records for financial or legal gain is a criminal offense in this state? Karen tried to speak, but her voice cracked. It must have been a mistake. I just wanted to. The judge cut her off. You wanted access to something that wasn't yours. James turned back to the judge. Your Honor, my client built and maintained that bridge for 15 years, entirely at his own expense. He repeatedly warned the HOA. He documented every violation. What happened was not sabotage. It was a predictable structural failure caused by reckless misuse. The judge leaned back, silent for a long moment, then said the words I'll never forget. Case dismissed. With prejudice. Karen's lawyer sank into his seat. Karen herself looked stunned, eyes wide, face blank. You could almost see the gears turning in her head, realizing the story was over. But it wasn't. Not yet, because a few days later, something unexpected happened. The county inspector who had reviewed the bridge after the accident sent me a certified letter. It stated, in perfect bureaucratic language, that my bridge had met all safety standards and that the creek it crossed was classified as non-navigable. That single word, non-navigable, meant the HOA had zero legal claim over it. None. Not in the past, not now, not ever. I smiled as I held that letter in my hands. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive like thunder. Sometimes it comes folded in an envelope delivered by a tired mailman, and it feels even better. The news spread fast. By the end of the week, the HOA board had called an emergency meeting. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need to be. Someone from the board slipped me a copy of the minutes later. Apparently, the members had discovered that Karen used over $40,000 of HOA funds to pay her personal legal fees. It didn't take long. The vote was unanimous. She was removed as president. A few days later, I got another letter. This time, it wasn't a threat or a lawsuit. It was an apology. Dear Mr. Mike, on behalf of the new HOA board, we sincerely apologize for the stress and damage caused by our previous administration. We acknowledge your rights to your property and bridge, and we wish to restore good relations with you. I read it twice. Then I pinned it right next to the first HOA letter, the one that started everything. Side by side, they looked like before and after photos of pride and consequence. The creek is quiet again now. The bridge has been repaired. Stronger, wiser, and just a little heavier with history. Sometimes I walk across it at dusk and think about how close arrogance came to destroying peace. And every time the boards creak beneath my boots, I'm reminded that respect isn't something you demand with rules. It's something you earn by boundaries. After the court verdict, I thought life would go back to normal. I really did. I thought I'd go back to quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, maybe some fishing at the creek. But that's not how life works when you've accidentally become a local legend. For weeks, people kept driving by my place, tourists, vloggers, even a few local reporters. Some came to take selfies with the bridge. Others just slowed down, rolled their windows down, and shouted, "Hey Mike, gravity wins again." Then they'd laugh and drive off. At first, it was annoying. Then it got funny. And then, somehow, it became routine. I never wanted attention. I wasn't the hero of some internet morality tale. I was just a man who built something and protected it. But in a world that loves drama, the story of Cement Karen had all the ingredients: pride, karma, and a splash of cement for flavor. The video didn't just go viral, it went international. Someone in Germany added subtitles and called it the Bridge of Justice. A guy in Texas made a country song about it. My nephew sent me a TikTok where an AI voice narrated the whole story with dramatic pauses and fake thunder sounds. I watched it and laughed till my ribs hurt. Still, behind all the noise, I could feel something heavier, the quiet satisfaction that the truth had survived. Karen, though, she didn't take it well. After she was removed as HOA president, she vanished for a while. Her big white SUV disappeared from the neighborhood, and the HOA office door stayed locked. For weeks, no one saw her. Then one day, a moving truck showed up. Her house was up for sale. Rumor had it she was moving 2 states over to start fresh. But you can't outrun the internet. The moment the listing went online, the comments section filled up. Is that Karen's house? Better check the foundation. She might have argued with it too. Some neighbors pitied her. Others laughed. Me? I just let it go. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. I'd seen what it did to her. How obsession eats you from the inside until all you see are enemies. A few weeks later, the new HOA board held a community meeting. This time I went, not because I had to, but because I wanted closure. The room was half full, folding chairs, coffee, cookies, the usual setup. People were friendlier now, almost embarrassed. A man named Bill, the new president, stood up and said, "Mike, we owe you an apology, all of us. Things went too far. You had every right to defend your property." I nodded. "Water under the bridge," I said, and the room actually laughed. It broke the tension instantly. After the meeting, a few neighbors came over to shake my hand. Some admitted they'd been afraid to speak up when Karen was in charge. "She threatened to fine us for hanging our flags wrong," one woman said. Another man confessed. "She once wrote me up for parking my truck 6 inches too close to the sidewalk." We all stood around swapping Karen stories like veterans sharing war memories. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt like a community again, not a kingdom ruled by clipboards and citations. But even as peace returned, something unexpected started to happen. Emails, dozens of them, from strangers across the country. Some were simple thank yous. People who said the story gave them courage to stand up to their own HOA bullies. Others wanted advice, asking how to handle overreaching boards, illegal fines, or nosy presidents. A few even sent photos of their own Karen encounters. I spent nights reading them, one after another. People from Florida, Texas, Oregon, even Alaska. I realized something. This wasn't just about one bridge. It was about control, about ordinary folks being pushed around by people who thought power gave them permission. One email stood out. It was from a retired veteran in Arizona. He wrote, "Mike, I watched your story the night before my own HOA hearing. I was going to give in. Then I decided to fight back. Thanks for reminding me that some things are worth standing for, even if it's just a mailbox." That one hit me. I didn't know what to say, so I just wrote back, "You don't need a bridge to stand your ground. Just solid footing." By summer, my bridge had become a symbol of sorts, not of defiance, but of patience. People didn't come to see revenge. They came to see what happens when someone fights smart. One afternoon, a young couple stopped by while I was repainting the railing. The man smiled and said, "Sir, this the famous bridge?" I laughed. "Depends who you ask." His wife took a photo, then asked softly, "Do you regret any of it?" I thought for a moment. "I regret that it had to come to that," I said. "But I don't regret standing my ground." They nodded and left, and I stood there for a while, looking at the creek. The water was clear again. Time had washed away the cement long ago. The bridge stood steady, stronger than before. Some nights, when I sit outside with a cup of tea, I catch myself thinking about Karen. I wonder if she ever understood what really broke, the bridge or her pride. Maybe both. I don't hate her. I never did. I think she wanted control, because control makes people feel safe. But she forgot the one rule every good builder knows. Too much pressure makes anything crack. Now, every spring I repaint the sign. Same words. Private bridge, 5-ton limit. It's more than a warning now. It's a reminder. For me, for anyone who crosses, for anyone who forgets that boundaries exist for a reason. Last month, a local newspaper ran a story titled "The Man Who Let Physics Speak." They called me patient, clever, and quietly heroic. I laughed when I read that. Heroic? No. I'm just a man who refused to be bullied on his own land. You see, the funny thing about bridges is they don't just connect land, they connect people too. And sometimes, when one breaks, it forces everyone to see what's really underneath. Now the neighborhood waves when I drive by. Some even stop to chat. The tension's gone. Peace has a sound, and it's the creak of old wood under steady boots. As I look back now, I realize that day by the creek, the day gravity took sides, wasn't about revenge at all. It was about balance, about proof that patience can outlast pride. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's simple. You don't need to fight loud to win. Sometimes you just need to build something strong, stand back, and let time, or a cement truck, prove your point. It's been 2 years now since that day, the day the bridge broke and everything changed. Sometimes when I walk down the path toward the creek, I still hear that old echo in my mind, the crack, the splash, the shouting. But it's softer now, like a dream you've seen too many times to fear anymore. I don't feel anger. I don't even feel victory. I just feel peace. The bridge stands there again, stronger, wider, wiser. The boards are new, the railings smooth. Miguel and I rebuilt it slowly, 1 week at a time, never rushing. We didn't talk much while working. We didn't need to. Some things don't require words. When I run my hand over the wood now, it feels warm in the sun. The grain runs like wrinkles on an old face, marks of what it survived. I sometimes imagine the bridge whispering back to me, "We made it." Every nail, every beam carries a memory. The sound of Karen yelling, the cameras clicking, the weight of those trucks, and somewhere between all that noise, there's a lesson that took me years to understand. Not every battle is about winning. Some are about proving that peace can't exist without boundaries. After the lawsuit ended, the town quieted down. Reporters stopped calling. The memes faded. The hashtag Cement Karen died off like every internet story does, replaced by something newer, louder, more ridiculous. But I stayed. The creek stayed. And life, in its slow and steady rhythm, began to hum again. It's funny how silence can teach you more than noise ever will. I've had a lot of time to think since then. About people, about pride, about why some folks feel the need to control what isn't theirs. I've realized that power, the kind that comes from titles or committees, it's fragile. It disappears the moment truth shows up. Karen's gone now. Moved somewhere out west, last I heard. Sold her house, left behind her legacy of rules and fines. Sometimes I think about writing her a letter, not to gloat, not to reopen wounds, but just to say that I forgive her. Not because she deserves it, but because carrying hate is like dragging cement. It hardens around you if you hold it too long. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of the bridge that broke. Some nights, I sit on my porch and listen to the creek. It sounds the same as it always did, patient, calm, eternal. The water doesn't remember who polluted it. It just keeps flowing. Maybe that's nature's way of forgiving. Neighbors still stop by sometimes. They ask about the bridge, about the lawsuit, about how it felt to face an entire board alone. I always smile and tell them the truth, that it wasn't courage. It was stubbornness mixed with patience. Courage sounds noble. Stubbornness sounds human. But in the end, they both get you across the same river. One neighbor, old Mrs. Thompson, told me once, "You did what we all wanted to do for years, Mike. You stood up to her." I told her I didn't stand up to her. I stood up for something, for what was mine, for what was fair, for what was right. There's a difference. One starts a fight, the other ends it. That's something I wish more people understood. I watched too many good folks back down just to keep peace. But peace without respect isn't peace. It's surrender with a smile. When I rebuilt the bridge, I didn't change the sign. It still reads, "Private Bridge, 5-ton limit." I left it that way on purpose. It's more than a rule now. It's a reminder that even strong things have limits, and those limits are what keep them standing. Every week, I wipe the dust off that sign, and every time, I whisper a quiet promise to myself. Never let anyone cross who refuses to see the weight they carry. The seasons have rolled by since then. Winters are gentler now, or maybe I've just grown older and softer. The trees lean a little closer over the water. The grass grows thicker near the banks. Life moves on, and somehow I do too. Sometimes I walk across the bridge at night just to listen. The wood creaks under my boots, steady and sure. The moonlight glimmers on the railings, painting silver lines across the boards. It's beautiful, peaceful in a way that's hard to describe. And when I reach the middle, I stop. Always the same spot, the place where the truck went down. I stand there and look at the reflection in the creek. It's me, older now, maybe a little wiser. But behind me, I see something else too, the man I used to be. The one who built this bridge for peace and had to defend it through chaos. I nod to him quietly like two versions of myself saying, we did all right. Sometimes I bring my notebook and write. Not for anyone else, just for me. Small thoughts, lessons I don't want to forget. Things like, don't confuse silence with weakness. Don't confuse rules with respect. And never underestimate the strength of someone who builds, not destroys. Those lines keep me grounded. Because life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. I still get letters sometimes. Strangers who found my story online. One man from Ohio wrote that he played my story for his whole family at dinner. Said it reminded him that honesty doesn't need an audience. It just needs evidence. Another woman from Maine said she finally stood up to her HOA about a fake fine. She ended her letter with, "You gave me courage, Mike. Thank you." I read those words, and I feel small again. Small in a good way, like a man who did one decent thing that somehow rippled further than he ever planned. People think the bridge story was about revenge. It wasn't. It was about balance. About giving the world back its center when someone tilts it too far. There was a time I used to believe that doing the right thing meant you had to win. Now I know better. Sometimes doing the right thing just means you didn't let yourself become what you were fighting. Karen's story ended in court. Mine didn't. Mine kept going quietly in this valley with every sunrise over that creek. Now, when I wake up, I hear birds again. The same ones that went silent the day the truck fell. They came back eventually. Everything does if you wait long enough. The world moves fast. People argue, fight, cancel, rebuild, but the creek doesn't care. It just keeps flowing round every rock, through every storm. Maybe that's the lesson. Maybe peace isn't something you fight for. Maybe it's something you return to after the noise fades. When my grandkids visit, they love the bridge. They run across it, laughing, the boards thumping under their small feet. Sometimes they ask, "Grandpa, is this the bridge from the story?" And I smile and say, yes, but it's not just a story about a bridge. It's about listening when people say stop. They don't fully get it yet, but one day they will. We all do, eventually. When you've lived long enough, you realize the most powerful word in the world isn't yes. It's no. Saying yes keeps the peace. Saying no keeps the balance. I used to think patience meant waiting quietly. Now I know patience is the art of standing still while the storm passes, without breaking, without yelling, just standing. The bridge taught me that. I sometimes imagine what Karen must have felt watching that truck sink. Not the fear, that's obvious, but the silence after it. The realization that no matter how loud she was, the creek didn't care. Nature doesn't take sides. It just reacts. That's what people forget. We think we're bigger than consequences. But we're not. The laws we break always find a way to remind us. Sometimes through gravity, sometimes through time. The evening air cools as I sit here, the sound of the water soft and endless. The light fades through the trees, golden and kind. I can smell pine and damp soil. It's the same smell as the day I built this bridge, the same as the day it broke. Time has a funny way of circling back. I pull out my old pocket knife and carve a small word into the underside of the railing. Respect. Just that. Simple and quiet. Because in the end, that's all this story was ever about. Not revenge. Not pride. Not winning. Just respect. For land. For limits. For truth. And as I stand up, brushing the dust off my jeans, I look across the water one last time before heading home. The sun dips low, the reflection glowing orange across the planks. I take a deep breath, and it feels good, clean, final. I whisper, almost to myself, "You did good, old man. You didn't give in. You didn't give up." Then I turn toward the cabin. The boards creak behind me, steady and strong. And I know, in some small way, the bridge, and we understand each other. We've both carried weight we weren't built for. We both bent. We both held on. And we both stood back up. So if anyone ever asks me what this whole thing taught me, I'll tell them this. You don't need power to win. You just need proof. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need truth. And sometimes when the world pushes too hard, all you need to do is stand still and let gravity handle the rest. Because in the end, the quiet ones, the patient ones, the builders, we win. Not through revenge, but through endurance. And maybe that's what the world needs more of. Less noise, more patience, less hate, more boundaries, less me first, more let's fix what's broken. So if you're listening, if you've ever been pushed, mocked, ignored, or made to feel small for standing your ground, remember this. Even a small bridge can hold back a flood if it's built strong enough. And sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is saying no, calmly, firmly, without apology. Because no matter how heavy the trucks, how loud the voices, or how unfair the fight, there's one truth they can't crush. What's right is right. And no matter what happens, stand for what's right, even if you stand alone.